meeting to order for our meeting for the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And it is 5:05 p.m. For our May 11th meeting. Our first order of business will be approval of minutes. If y'all will look over those minutes, and then we'll discuss those. And if there's any actions, please let me know. But feel free to look those over, and we'll go from there. Is there any changes anyone sees at this point?
I don't see any changes.
Okay.
No.
All right. If so, then maybe we'll move forward with making a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Okay. Again, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Then we'll move forward with that then. The second item will be public hearing. Consider the request for a specific use permit to allow for mini warehouse facility in a B2 general business zoning district for lot 1 of the Maxwell Addition subdivision located at 6825 North Street. Elena, if you'd like to start with that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Yes, tonight's request is to consider specific use permit to allow for a mini warehouse storage facility at 6825 North Street. The property is currently zoned B2 general business. This district is intended to accommodate those business activities that are primarily oriented towards the automobile. Per the zoning ordinance, a mini warehouse facility is allowed in the B2 zoning district with approval of a specific use permit. The SUP or specific use permit process allows staff, the commission, and city council the opportunity to review and impose any conditions if necessary on the development. This development includes 3 phases. The first phase consists of 3 existing structures shown as buildings A, B, and C. Those are outlined in blue on the site plan on your screen. And the second phase includes 3 additional buildings shown as A1, B1, and D, and those are shown as red on your screen. These buildings are currently under construction. And the third phase is shown as building E, and that is the building outlined in green. The permit plans for the first and second phases of this development were submitted and permitted for construction in April 2017 and December of 2019, respectively. And during both of these time periods, there was some transition in the planning department and the time where we went from having a full-time permanent city planner to an interim position. And so unfortunately, during the review process, staff missed the zoning, and so therefore we are retroactively requesting approval of all 3 phases of this development. As I stated earlier, the property is zoned B2 general business. It's located, the property located immediately south of the warehouse storage facility is also zoned B2 general business and R3 2-family. The portion that's zoned B2 is being used as a beverage warehouse and distribution facility with taking primary access to North Street. The property zoned R3 is comprised of 8 single-family homes, and they take access to Industrial Drive. Property to the west is zoned I-1 Light Industrial, and the property to the north, north of Ernest McLean Road, is zoned Agricultural. Per the 2003 future land use plan, this area is designated as commercial. Commercial is described as shopping and service facilities for the sale of goods and services, including small shops and larger retail stores and centers. The future land use plan is consistent with the current zoning of the property, which is B2 general commercial. Generally, the zoning district is located along major thoroughfares. As stated, the mini warehouse facility is allowed in B2 district with approval of the SUP, and approval of the SUP would not change the underlying uses that are allowed in the zoning district. So the proposal is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. As a reminder, when reviewing an application for a zoning change or a specific use permit, the following conditions shall be considered, and these include compatibility with adjacent land uses, providing for the orderly growth and development for surrounding property, adequate infrastructure such as utilities, roads, and drainage, the design of drives and parking, prevention of nuisances, lighting, sufficient landscaping, and the proposed use being in accordance with the comprehensive plan. Many warehouse storage facilities are often met with objections due to concerns of aesthetics, and hours of operation, and overall design. In general, these types of facilities generate little traffic in comparison to some of the other land uses that are permitted in the B2 general business zoning district. They typically have few employees on site at any given time, thus there are little to no crowds for customers. The office hours for this particular facility are between 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. The facility is also gated, and the daily gate access is restricted from 10 p.m. To 6 a.m., thereby reducing the opportunity for noise nuisances at night, again, in relation to the adjoining single-family neighborhood to the south. The staff feels that the proposed land use is low in intensity, and there have been no code enforcement complaints for the development since its initial construction in 2017. The staff believes the proposed use is compatible with the adjacent uses in the area, and that the development will not adversely affect any of the adjacent properties or interfere with the current quality of life for the abutting single-family development to the south. Staff went out and conducted a site visit. On your screen, you'll see the existing 6'1" fence and the landscape buffer that was provided with phase 1 of construction. And this photo was taken at the end of Rocky Lane, where that single-family development is located. Based on the findings outlined in the presentation and in the staff report, staff believes that the request meets the review criteria and recommends approval. We did send out 13 notices to property owners within 200 feet of the notification area. And as of date, we haven't received any responses in favor or in opposition of the request. This item is scheduled to be heard at City Council's regular meeting on May 19th. That concludes staff's presentation. We didn't have anyone sign up to speak at the public hearing. But for procedural purposes, Commissioner, please open and close the public hearing.
Sure. Obviously, this is a open meeting, so if anybody would like to speak for or against the property, feel free to step forward and speak.
Hello, everyone. My name is J.D. Blacklock, and I'm the developer. My parents have been in storage in Nacogdoches for a long time, and this is my facility that I'm building on the north side, and it's my goal to make it the nicest, cleanest, safest storage facility in Nacogdoches, and I hope we've met that goal, and that's what we're going to continue and try to do, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, you're cutting in and out, and I apologize. I think I got most of that, but
okay.
Did anyone have?
I was just saying my goal is to build the nicest storage facility in Nacogdoches, and I hope that we've done that, and happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
So obviously these red units are the ones that you're in the process of building, and so you're just because the blues, what you've already got there, obviously, which looks nice. So you're just adding more spaces. In other words.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're just adding more storage.
Okay. Did anyone else on the commission have any questions?
No.
No questions from me.
Okay.
Nor I.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Blacklock. I appreciate you speaking. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak for or against regarding this matter? Okay. Seeing none, would anybody like to entertain a motion or any changes or anything to this particular agenda item? Number 3.
I would like to make a motion to, I was looking for the number, sorry. Approve the specific use permit 2020-02 for to allow for a mini warehouse facility in the B2 general business zoning district for Lot 1 of the Maxwell Addition subdivision at 6825 North Street.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. And motion carries and is approved. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 4. Public hearing, consider the request for, excuse me. Yes, number 4, public hearing, consider request for a specific use permit to allow for a garden shop and plant sales, display or greenhouse in a B1 local business zoning district for lots 13, 14, and 15. Portion of lot 16, block 1, section 1 of the Colonial Hills subdivision recorded in volume 2536, page 264 of the deed records of Nacogdoches County, Texas, located on the northwest corner of Road Street. Elena, if you'll go over this with us, thank you.
Thank you. As stated, this request is for a specific use permit for a garden shop and plant sales facility located at the northwest corner of Appleby Sand Road in East Austin. The property is zoned B1 local business, and the zoning ordinance does require approval of a specific use permit for this land use in this zoning district. There was an SUP that was previously granted for this property for a garden shop and plant sales facility back in May of 2004. And the garden shop operated at this location for a number of years. The zoning ordinance does say that whenever a specific use permit is granted, it shall be voided or annulled if the use is abandoned for more than 180 days. And of course, the property's been vacant for several years. So the previous specific use permit for the garden shop and plant sales facility has since expired. As stated, the applicant again proposes to utilize this subject property for garden shop and plant sales. This will include the outdoor display and sales of plants, gardening tools, trees, and other landscape materials. And then they also include, they also intend to have limited retail sales inside the office facility. The property located to the north of the subject property is zoned B1 and is currently being used as a hair salon. A portion of the property to the west along East Austin Street is zoned B1 and is vacant, while the remaining property to the west is zoned R1 single family and is developed as a single family neighborhood known as Colonial Hills subdivision. The property takes access to Applebee's Sand Road to the east and Austin Street to the south. The future land use plan designates this area and the surrounding properties as a single-family residential, which is described as conventional one-family detached dwellings, which also includes duplexes. And in the desire to harmonize land uses in the area, it's always relevant to consider the predominant use in the zoning and then allocate future uses and zoning that'll blend in with the area. And although the future land use plan designates this area as single-family, the subject property and the properties located along the intersection of Applebee's Sand Road and East Austin are zoned local business. And this is intended to accommodate those business activities, supplying the day-to-day commercial needs of nearby residences while not adversely affecting neighboring residential areas. And apart from the land use, the development's location is appropriate for transportation considerations, being located at the intersection of 2 major arterials. Additionally, the proposed development furthers the goals of the 2003 comprehensive plan by promoting inward growth and encouraging infill, and also avoids undesirable development outcomes by coordinating future development with the physical environment to preserve and protect natural features. Again, as a reminder, when reviewing the application for a zone change or specific use permit, the following conditions shall be considered. And I'll just go over these briefly. They include compatibility with adjacent land uses, providing for orderly growth and development, ensuring adequate infrastructure such as utilities and roads, accommodating for the design of drives and parking, preventing nuisances, lighting, landscaping, and ensuring compliance with the comprehensive plan. As shown on your screen, the conceptual site plan does propose to preserve the large existing trees that are located along the property line that abuts the residential neighborhood to the west. This provides an additional natural buffer in addition to the minimum landscaping requirements outlined in the zoning ordinance. The applicant also proposes to place the outdoor greenhouses along the south side of the property away from the residential area. And the parking areas and drives will be along the east side of the property, again, steering that commercial activity as far away from that established single-family neighborhood as possible. The proposed land use is low intensity in nature and will be primarily used during the morning and afternoon hours. Staff believes that the proposed use will likely be compatible with the adjacent neighborhood and land uses in the area and will not interfere with the current quality of life of the Colonial Hills subdivision. These are some site photos of the existing drive and parking area that the applicant intends to utilize. The photo on the top of your screen is the view from East Austin Street, and the photo on the bottom of your screen is the street view from Appleby Sand Road. Staff sent out 14 notices to the property owners within 200 feet of the notification area. At the time that we wrote the staff report, there was one contact in opposition of the request, citing specific concerns over drainage, and then we also received a letter in support of the request from one of the adjoining property owners in the area. This item is scheduled to be heard at City Council's regular meeting on May 19th. And based on the findings in the staff report and in the presentation, staff does recommend approval of the specific use permit. And that concludes staff's presentation.
One quick question. So this there indicates that one driveway and have one-way ingress and egress. Is that what I see there?
Yes.
Okay. So they'll be entering off of East Austin, off of Appleby Sand and exiting on East Austin, it looks like.
Mm-hmm, correct.
Okay. So there won't be any additional for parking, it doesn't look like.
No, there's the driveways that are existing are going to be the driveways that are going to be used. The driveway off of Appleby Sand Road will be two-way, while the driveway off of East Austin will be one-way. And the applicant does propose some additional impervious area for the permanent office building and some additional parking that's outlined in red on the conceptual site plan. But it's approximately 3,500 square feet of additional impervious surface area. And this is just a conceptual site plan. Whenever they move to the next phase of development with the permitting, staff will receive a more detailed site plan that will accommodate grading and drainage, and we'll review any additional improvements on the property.
Did you say also that these trees that are there, they're going to leave existing?
Yes, if you look at the site plan, they are proposing to preserve two very large trees that are existing, as shown between the parking area along Appleby Sand Road and that single-family neighborhood to the west. I believe there's 3 trees there, and so when the site plan is submitted, we'll have a tree survey that identifies the species and size, and those trees will be protected during any kind of construction activities. So they'll be preserved in their natural state.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions for Elena?
Oh, just one. Did staff have any concern about the drainage issue raised in one of the respondents' correspondence?
Steve, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. Realizing, of course, this is only an SUP stage, they still will be required to present us with a fully developed site plan, which will include their scheme for drainage. So as long as our job's to make sure that they all the drainage requirements for any construction. So at that point in time, we'll vet individually. We are aware of the concerns on Colonial Hills Drive. We've met with those residents several times over the years. So certainly my answer to you is that at the time of plan review, we'll ensure that it's fully compliant with our ordinances.
Sounds good.
it looks like they're going to be leaving, was that a 20 or 25-foot buffer there anyway, up against the Colonial Hills residents?
Yes.
Yes, and RJ, I apologize. I just realized that I was presenting, but I was not sharing my screen like I thought I was. And so
That's why I couldn't understand.
I apologize. I apologize. I thought you could see what I was looking at, but no. So if you look at the exhibit on your screen, there's
It's still not on there.
oh, it's you still can't see it.
Hang on, let me see.
It's on mine.
Oh,
I
got
have,
it. Got it now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I can see it, Elena.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So again, I apologize.
Yeah, I've been looking at it. I've got the same thing. I was just-
Okay.
Is there any kind of buffer in between this area and the residential, like a fencing or anything?
Yeah, per the zoning ordinance, the developer will be required to install a 6-foot wooden fence and a 15-foot landscape buffer. We do encourage that they utilize the existing trees that are inside that landscape buffer, the minimum requirements. And there's a fence, I believe there's a fence located along that property line, but it's unclear at this point if that's the neighboring fence or if that was built with the first SUP. But we'll verify that through the site plan process. There's also a 20-foot building setback where there's limited development activity. And so at minimum, 20-foot building setback, 15-foot landscape buffer. And then as you can see on the exhibit, the proposed improvements are away from the neighborhood along the south and eastern portions of the property.
Okay.
One quick question I had, and this may be not a very intelligent question. What are those two small squares?
So those are proposed, smaller proposed greenhouses and pergola areas where they're going to have plant display
Got it. Okay.
and to that nature. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me jump in and introduce myself. And Charles Schugert and Janae Harmon were the proposed developers, owners of the business. So I wanted to introduce y'all. If there's other questions, again, this is in the initial SUP phase. So this is a start. We're looking forward to opening a business there and regenerating this corner.
Sure.
It's active and it's really exciting for us. So if there's any other questions about us or the proposal, please fire away.
well, let me congratulate you on starting a new business. And I think it's a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
I love nurseries and I love plant sales opportunities. So go for it.
Thank you. They tend to bring smiles.
When do you expect to open?
I'm expecting no less than 2 months. I mean, no more than 2 months. I'm sorry. Depending on permitting and building, we're now preparing that, assuming that this is all going to move forward next week. So we're already working on that.
Okay.
RJ, I also sent the commission an email from Miss Janet Foltz, who's signed up to speak during the public hearings, and she submitted some photos. And so I'll be sharing those on my screen after we open the public hearing and call Miss Janet in.
Okay. Did anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I do have one question, just because I know the drainage issue is going to come up. It looks like, well, I can't tell. Are you adding 3,500 square feet of impervious parking lot? Is that what it is?
Yes, correct. Approximately 3,500 on the east portion, the white shaded area. If you look at the site plan,
Right.
I believe
Yes.
the drainage
Okay.
questions might be more concerned with the west side of the property.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure where her house
Yeah.
was in relation to that, but
Yes, along Appleby Sand.
Coming to the west.
okay. And
Anyone
And
else have any questions?
and one more, just if I'm assuming there's going to have to be an engineering study on that, Mr. Bartlett, about whether or not that's going to increase any potential runoff from the property.
Yeah, Ken, it's basically we look at square footage of new impervious area.
Yeah.
So in this case, when we get their actual site plan, we'll nail that number. If it's below 14,000 square feet, they don't have to provide on-site stormwater detention. They just have to manage their stormwater. And so we'll look and it'll be reviewed in both cases. Over 14,000 square feet requires a professional engineer design.
Okay. Thank you.
What does manage the water mean exactly, as far as just redirecting it, or what are your?
Well, let me give you an example. If they're not doing stormwater detention, they're under that, which this plan shows to be under that.
Okay.
But they're collecting all their water in an inlet somewhere and discharging it in an 8-inch pipe right at the fence. That's still not an acceptable practice. So we would look for managing the drainage where it at least emulates a sheet flow and emulates the flow that's currently there today, so that we're not putting something in jeopardy that wasn't in jeopardy before, based on redirection of the water.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much. And this is an open meeting, so we'll. I think we have 2 that are speaking by phone to speak on this matter. So we'll wait for you to make the.
Yeah, and so we will call Janet, and while we're calling her, I will pull up the images that she submitted.
Okay, so we'll just wait to hear that they come on then.
Hello.
Hi, Janet.
Yes.
Hi. We are calling to speak to agenda item number 4 on the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This is the public hearing, and this is your opportunity to speak.
Okay, I have it on channel 21, but there is no audio. So I can speak, but I don't know what's been said. So you'll just have to guide me through.
Okay, our IT is working on that as we speak. I apologize. This is the first time for us as far as virtual meetings go, but we are trying to get that squared away right now. But I have your images pulled up, so if you want to go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll just tell you an overview. The image to the top left shows the field behind my home, and I'm on Colonial Drive. And I just wanted to speak at the meeting about the erosion issues incurred on my property as a result of its ongoing water and sand runoff from Appleby Sand Road in East Austin behind the property. And I know we had torrential rainfall recently, but the drainage issue is an ongoing problem. And the homes on Colonial Drive are not seen because of the dividing fence. You can see a little bit of the fence over in that top picture over on the right, but all of the homes are right behind that fence. And everything that's done on the field side directly affects our homes, even the ones across the street, because the water runs down the hill and does damage in other places just beyond the homes. You can see the sand that settled. The yardstick in the middle shows 12 inches of a table leg, but the table leg itself is 24 inches. That was the last rainfall, the deposited sand. I've spent more than $6,000 on my drainage system, which has been updated or enlarged 5 times. My neighbors have actually spent more money than that. And not to mention what it costs to clean up. And the city, you had a picture of a letter from Milton Moore. He was an engineer, or is an engineer, and he just said that any change in the use of the property behind the home would require a drainage review and a plan to protect myself and others. And when I spoke with the city, there's his letter, a part of it in the middle. When I spoke with the city in 2004 and 2009, They were told that once the property sells, it's the owner's responsibility, and that we'd need to speak with the owners or get an attorney and take them to court. But I don't want to take anybody to court. I just don't think that the potential buyers know what the homeowners on Colonial Drive are going through. And so I spoke with you. I have more pictures, but this, you can get a good idea of what goes on. Case Opperman came by today, and he looked at it. He said he thinks the curbs are too low. We're supposed to talk to TxDOT because water comes off of Appleby Sand and down. But that shows the picture with the woman extending her arm up. The garage is 8 feet tall. That's how many rocks came into my drainage basin just from someone on the other side innocently put some river rocks, and they just don't realize. They don't think about anybody on the other side. That shows the front of the garage. Her arm extended, cannot even touch the roof. In the back, it's almost bumping her head. That's how much sand has been deposited over the years. It's just, that's over 2 feet of sand. It's over 1 foot on the table leg, and it's just ongoing. Now, as far as a nursery going in, that's the best possible option because there's minimal things done. The trees would remain there. Most of the parking lot is already there. A new parking lot would affect it somewhat. We had a nursery there in 2004, but we had potting soil, and everything that they had out would end up at the bottom of the hill in my drainage basin. So that's everything I've got to say. But we're happy to work with them if they work with us, and just I will make them aware if anything is going on. If they sell things like river rocks, I think they're contained. They're not just put in a pile and ready to go, because anything they would have to be contained so that during a rainfall it wouldn't wash down.
Well, thank you very much for speaking. Did anyone have any questions or anything? Well, thank you very much for speaking on behalf of the property.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elena, do you?
Okay, do I hang up now?
Yes, thank you, Janet. Yes, we're going to call Miss Cindy German now.
Goodbye.
All right, we have an alternative number for Miss German. We're going to try that one now. Hello, Cindy.
Yes.
Hi, Cindy. This is Elena Chafin with the City of Nacogdoches Planning Department.
Right.
You signed up to speak on item number 4 of tonight's agenda, and
You know we can't hear you.
Yes, we do. And our IT department is working on that as we speak. I apologize for the inconvenience.
Okay. I just didn't know if
Yes,
y'all were
ma'am.
aware.
Yes, ma'am. We are working on it as we speak. I apologize.
Okay.
All right. The floor is yours.
Okay. One of my biggest concerns is if they put that nursery in there, it's gonna affect somehow that water runoff. I want to see if it's going to be monitored to make sure that they don't pave more than what they're saying or doing more than what they're saying. You know, but I couldn't tell by the meeting what they were planning on using. I saw where it was red, which comes up halfway through my backyard. And like I say, we got a runoff issue that's crest at the top of the hill and comes down the fence line and affects everybody on the strip that backs up to that. So I guess that would be my main concern is how much are they really going to pave and what are they going to do against the fence line? And will they be watched?
Elena, is that a question you can answer?
Yes, and let me share my screen again and pull up the site plan so we can all take a look at it while we're speaking. So what they're, you can see the boundaries of the property in yellow, and then there's the existing.
Wait, hang on. I guess it's loading. Yeah, the red.
Yes, ma'am. So what they're showing outlined in red is parking. Some of it's existing parking, and then some of it's new. That longer rectangular red box that you see along Appleby Sand Road that's closer to East Austin, that's existing parking and pavement. And then they're proposing some additional parking just north of that existing drive. And some drive aisle to accommodate that. But right now it's proposed to be approximately 3,500 square feet, and it's based on the calculated parking requirements. So it could be a little less, actually a little less than what's shown on their screen. But whenever we get that site plan, the full-blown site plan at the permitting process, we'll know exactly how much parking is required, and they'll provide that parking based on that calculation. But generally, what they're limited to is what's shown here on the screen. So they're proposing to preserve those large trees that are shown. All the parking and drive aisles will be on the east side of the property, and any additional pavement or parking will be limited to that area that they're showing in those red rectangles.
In that red.
Yes, ma'am.
Would they? Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm one of the commissioners, and what I think you may have missed by not hearing a little bit earlier was as the proposal goes through the entire vetting process, this entire drainage issue is going to get looked at very carefully and by the city staff. They're aware of it. And so I think they're going to be looking to get the best outcome for the neighborhood that they can. So,
well, as long as they're going to address it, if they put some kind of drains or.
It's whatever. I can't address that, but I just know that it's going to be looked at further than what you are hearing this afternoon. It's just the first step in the process for this to go through.
Okay.
I was reassured by that. Perhaps you are.
Yeah, as long as they address the drain issue.
Steve, do you want to speak on that for just a minute, if you don't mind?
Sure, RJ. Hi, I'm Steve Bartlett. I'm the city engineer, and I know you didn't get to hear us speak earlier, and I apologize for that.
No. Yeah.
But basically, this is, this process, of course, as you know, is to even permit this concept plan in this zoning area. What follows all this is basically an actual designed site plan that they'll submit, which will include much more specific details than you see on this, dimensioning, and part of that is a drainage plan. So they will show us how they're going to grade everything, how they're going to manage their drainage. I mean, simply put, as you guys all know, and I've worked with all you landowners in this section of Colonial Hills over the years as a consulting engineer, is that water all comes to you. And so that water will still continue to come to you. There's no place other than downhill to basically put it. What we look for is that how they manage that water. In other words, to make sure that they're not, putting basically a fire hose at your back fence and running.
Right.
So yeah, we will look with some design ideas on how to better manage that. I think a lot of the problem has been actually erosion as well as water. You're getting a ton of sand back there, and those were great photos, by the way, we saw earlier. And so I think getting some grass and greenery and development in there will actually greatly help that problem. Keep the soil from moving. And so the erosion will be something we can work with them on separately. But I think in general, it's managing that stormwater so that it's not concentrated right in your back door. But generally the water, like I say, as you know, is going to come your way. So it's all about us working with them to do it in an intelligent way.
Okay, well, I didn't realize they had to come up with a drainage plan.
Yes, ma'am. Basically, this is all about zoning issues. And so what follows that is an actual building permit to build their buildings, their parking lot, and it includes a site plan, which has got drainage and utilities and everything on it. So yes, there's a whole set of plans. They just don't want to invest in creating all those plans until they know that it's acceptable to build their project in this particular zoning area. So that's kind of what this step is about. So they aren't showing you details of drainage because quite honestly, they haven't invested the time in looking into it or the energy, not knowing whether they could do this project. So yes, we'll work when they actually do permitting to try to do this like we would, whether it's a brand new bank on the corner or whether it's this wonderful business.
All right.
Did you have any more questions?
No, sir, that's it. Thank
Wonderful.
you very much.
Thank you for speaking. I appreciate you very much.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Did anyone have any other questions for Janae or Steve or the potential buyer here or potential developer? Any questions for anyone?
Just to go back to what Steve mentioned, and this looks like it was taken during a drought, this satellite photo or overhead photo. But you can see how much erosion's happening on the property because there's not enough plant grass or whatever would grow in that sand on the property. So I do think that's probably the main issue more than the water. As long as the water isn't going to be affected negatively or increase flow to one property over another from the development, I think the main issue is probably just going to be erosion, which would be right up your alley if you're building a garden center, I would think.
Right. And I'll speak right quick, Kenneth, if you don't.
Yeah, sure.
I've watched this property for a period of time, and if you go to Google Earth and backdate the images, there's quite a bit of activity that has taken place north of the property at the hair salon, in the back of their building, and the erosion right now is coming from traffic not associated with this property. They're driving through there and actually creating an erosion issue. But the property itself in general is sound, but it seems like it's being used for something that's creating this. So that's my plan, is exactly how it was presented earlier, was great, is controlling the erosion and getting something there. That Mr. Bartlett brought up. Yeah.
Do they know yet if the water is coming from the property there, or is it actually coming off the street?
I can't answer that. I don't know.
Well, our assistant city engineer, Case Opperman, went out there to visit it today. So I'll catch up with him, but apparently he saw some issues where probably the street drainage proper looked like it was jumping the curb also and coming out. So that's an issue we'll address with TxDOT. Those aren't city streets; those are highway department streets. But we'll address that with them and take a look at their drain. They're basically responsible for that drainage, but we'll look and see if that's, of course, exacerbating all this is having that runoff from the street. And so we haven't looked into it to that much detail, but apparently he saw something that cautioned him a little bit. So we'll certainly run down that track.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? If not, I'd entertain a motion for or against this. Yeah.
RJ, did you close the public hearing?
I'm sorry. Does anybody else like to speak for or against? I think that was the only two speakers that we had at this particular point.
Right.
Okay, so the public hearing portion of this will be closed, and if anybody would like I said, would like to make a motion for or against making a special specific use permit, please speak up.
I'll make a motion to approve this permit as presented by staff and discussed here. The numbers I'm not looking at right now.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that, and just as by way of comment, I don't think there's any conditions that we need to place on this, because I think it'd be better to let it just go through the standard site review process. Any condition we put on it now would be speculative, so I think it's best to approve it as it is.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And it passes, and we'll continue to move forward. Thank you very much for your input. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, and that's consider ordinance amending Chapter 18, zoning, Article 6, development standards, Division 1, generally Section 118-428, commercial sites with residential adjacency of the city of Nacogdoches, Texas Code of Ordinances, providing a severability clause, providing a repeal clause, and providing an effective date.
All right. I will share my screen this time. Can everybody see it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Staff is in the process of assessing city ordinances, primarily the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance, to make sure that one, they meet current development needs, and to recommend innovative, economical, and modern ways to promote smart growth in the city in compatibility with other development within the city limits and beyond. City staff has been reviewing, Let me go through. City staff has been reviewing the city landscaping and screening requirements per section 118-428, commercial sites with residential adjacency. And in order to create some additional flexibility to waive screening and buffer requirements adjacent to residential properties under certain circumstances, we've proposed the following major changes. These include two major changes. One is the addition of an exceptions clause that allows with approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission, waiver of the required 6-foot wooden fence or 6-foot masonry wall that's required whenever commercial development abuts residential areas. And this may be approved in certain circumstances, including property that abuts natural features, such as a creek or a FEMA designated floodplain, or when there's natural vegetation that's already in place that would provide sufficient screening. And the other one allows for substitutions to the required fence, and that would allow administrative approval of what staff is proposing as living screens along that residential adjacency. These include evergreen buffers. This is a 15-foot landscape buffer with a double row of evergreens that are 6 foot 6 foot in height at planting. The other is a hedge wall. Again, it's a 15-foot landscape buffer of evergreen, hedge shrubs and trees. Again, a 6 foot in height at planting. And we've provided some site photos to give you an example of what some of these areas might look like that are already in town. Lenana Creek is one of our major creeks in the city of Nacogdoches, and it abuts several commercial properties that front onto University Drive, where some of these provisions could be accommodated. Here on the screen, you see a map with a red circle that is showing the northwest corner of University Drive and East Main Street. If you go out and look at the physical site conditions, you see Lenana Creek backing up with a bridge. The photo on the top of the screen and on the back is, on the bottom of the screen is a zoomed in photo of the creek. This photo is taken from the parking lot, and you can see there's a lot of grade differentiation as the property grades back to the creek, and a lot of mature vegetation. So in this scenario, instead of cutting down that vegetation or building a 6 foot fence and then plantings, it's in the best interest of the city to preserve this natural area and allow that mature landscaping to satisfy the screening requirements. This is a property located on Northeast Stallings Drive. It's a church that backs up to a residential neighborhood. There isn't a creek or FEMA regulated floodplain on this property, but the property is surrounded by existing mature vegetation. These pictures are taken from the parking area. You can see there's large pine trees as well as some understory. And if this property were to be expanded or redeveloped, then a lot of this existing mature landscaping would, in essence, be removed, and then new plantings and a fence would be provided in their place. And so staff feels that in order to preserve the natural beauty and character of the city of Nacogdoches and to encourage tree preservation, these are some alternatives to the fence requirement that could still satisfy the intent of the screening, which is to provide a visual barrier between commercial activities and residential areas, and to protect those residential properties from nuisances such as light and noise. The second change that we talked about was the introduction of living screens. The first one is the evergreen buffer. This is a 15-foot landscape buffer that includes a double row of evergreen trees that are planted 6 foot at time of planting. The intent is to provide a visual screen as well as a barrier to light and noise. And the idea is that in certain scenarios that this might be appropriate in lieu of a fence in order, again, to preserve the natural beauty of Nacogdoches and encourage additional landscaping. The second alternative living screen is the hedge wall. It's very similar to the evergreen buffer. It's just a single row of evergreen plantings with the idea of providing a barrier, a visual barrier, and then a barrier to light and noise between commercial activities and residential areas. That is the end of staff's presentation. We are looking for a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission to take forward to City Council on May 19th. The Planning and Zoning Commission could recommend that we move forward with a proposal as presented in your packet, or the Planning and Zoning Commission could recommend that staff go back and do additional research and make changes, or strictly just impose additional conditions on what we've already presented this evening. We do not have anyone signed up to speak on this item, but it is a public hearing. So I do ask Mr. Bohag, if the commission doesn't have any questions of staff, that we go ahead and open the public hearing.
I have a few questions if I could.
Okay.
One, so this is, in other words, this is just, you're trying to get an exception. Honestly, instead of having to cut trees down, be able to use these natural buffers is what you're trying to do. So just have this kind of as an option, as an exception to the rule, just to like you said, to keep the green spaces. Ultimately, what you're trying to do, correct?
Correct. And the proposal doesn't reduce the minimum standards that are outlined in the zoning ordinance today. It also doesn't increase those standards. It just provides some alternatives and some exceptions with the intent of trying to preserve natural features, preserve creeks, and promote tree preservation and greener, more vibrant commercial developments. And so these are simply alternatives and exceptions. Private development would still be able to move forward with the current development standards that are in place. These are just kind of above and beyond to provide some additional flexibility where Planning and Zoning Commission or staff can approve alternatives without going through the variance process. And there's lots of these instances in town where you have these commercial developments that back up to creeks, that back up to floodplain, that back up to natural features. And staff believes that preserving these areas not only provides for a more effective and beautiful visual buffer, it also kind of preserves the unique character of the community as a whole by preserving that natural scenic landscape.
One other question: will it go towards their landscape, amount that they have to have, or is it something separate? Or as far as they usually have requirements as far as with their trees and all of that. Is this go towards that, or is that something separate?
Correct. So the zoning ordinance has landscaping requirements that speak to 3 different development standards. You have your street landscaping that says per every 100 feet of street frontage, you have to provide a tree every 35 feet. And those trees have to be within 35 feet of that front property line. So the intent is to provide additional aesthetics along the streetscape between the commercial development and the right-of-way. And then you have additional landscaping requirements for private commercial developments that have parking lots that are over 120 spaces. And so the idea is to break up these large expanses of concrete with additional green and landscaping to soften that. And then the third is this commercial sites with residential adjacency, which is required to provide a visual buffer between commercial development and residential. These plantings would only go towards the requirements for that commercial screening, for that buffer between the commercial activities and the residential area. They would not be counted towards streetscaping because those standards are very specific as to the location of those trees. They have to be, provided between the development and the street. And the other landscaping requirements are specific to parking lots.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Elena? Okay, seeing none, this is a public hearing, so if anybody would like to speak for or against, you may move forward and speak on for or against this particular matter. And I think seeing how we don't have anyone signed up for it, we'll go ahead and close that public hearing. And any other questions or concerns or thoughts about changing this or doing it, or just doing it as written? I mean, does anyone have any input there?
Good.
You can mute yourself if you have a lot of background noise.
Personally, I like it as written, as far as I can see it. I think it's a good idea to maintain and to save what's already there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of surprised that leaving the trees along the stream or creeks hasn't already been into play, just because it helps maintain or keep from erosion, which we're already talking about.
Yeah. I think it's a good policy, especially if you're opening a garden center.
Good
Yeah.
example.
Thanks for that.
Good example. Yeah, I think it's well written, like you said, Elena. At the end of the day, this is kind of trying to be the garden capital of the area. And so, being able to preserve what's already here is natural, it's beautiful. We have a lot of, big, nice trees and, different types of plants and that sort of thing to use as a natural buffer just makes perfect sense to me. And so being able to have that exception to be able to look at the rule and see, hey, this particular, it works well for this particular situation, being that it's whatever it may be, a creek or low spot or whatever it may be, it makes perfect sense, I think. So,
Thank you.
any other thoughts or concerns? Okay. Would anybody like to? I guess we need to make a motion to go ahead and accept this to move forward with to go to city council. Correct, Elena?
Correct.
Okay. Does anyone like to make a motion for or against this particular amendment to the zoning development standards?
I make a motion that we accept the amendment here as written.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Perfect. The motion carries. And on my agenda, that looks like that's all there is. So we will adjourn the meeting. Is there anything else, Elena? Are we good to adjourn?
Yes, we're good. Again, I apologize for not sharing my screen for the first initial items. I had several site photos and exhibits, and I apologize for that, but we will get all of that cleared up for the council meeting, and we will try to address the the sound issue with the channel 21 and with the channel 21 as well.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you
On the
Right.
whole, yeah.
for talking about meeting as of 6:06.
All right.
Very much.
Good night.
Bye-bye.